I was down there, and I watched our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center right after it came down.
There's Donald Trump back in 2016 referring to 9/11 as 7/11, and some might think, what's the big deal? I mean, it was just a little mistake, a little slip of the tongue. But Trump, unfortunately, has made 9/11 about him over and over again. Today is the 18th anniversary of that tragic day, and Trump again has decided that he is going to make this about him and airing his grievances. So first, he started off the day with a tweet that did commemorate 9/11. It features Melania Trump and himself in a photo that says, "We will never forget." But only 10 minutes after that, he started attacking Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, demanding lower interest rates. He also complained about an ABC Washington Post poll that shows that his approval ratings are dismal and continue to fall. He was whining about polling that shows Americans are worried about a recession, and they should be worried because Mick Mulvaney, Donald Trump's own acting chief of staff, told GOP donors that it's very likely a recession is coming and buckle up. And then finally, he also lashed out on fake news, which is just a typical thing that Trump does on a daily basis. But I do want to show you how Trump has responded or talked about 9/11 in the past. Let's start off with this next video, which shows him talking to a reporter on the day of 9/11.
Did you have any damage, or did you know what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest.
So on the day of that terrorist attack that has changed this country forever, he has decided, you know what, it's a good chance for me to promote how tall my building is.
Yeah, and he also, conservatives are the ones who are supposed to care about this religious observance of 9/11. Now, 9/11 was an insanely awful tragedy, and we should be commemorating all of the victims and their families and everyone in New York who had to feel the repercussions of all of this, and the Pentagon, all the other the planes that went down. But at the same time, leftists aren't the ones who are saying, oh, you need to be this sad at this point, and you need to be exactly as repentant as we would expect that. That comes from the conservative side, but because he's a part of their tribe, they explain away all of his behavior. When if Obama had called 9/11 7/11, that's all we would be talking about for 2 months on end.
I mean, we don't even have to go back to years ago. I mean, we could just talk about something that happened, a few months ago with Representative Ilhan Omar. And she's talking about the treatment of Muslims after 9/11. And because she didn't use the exact wording that Republicans deem appropriate, they attacked her as some terrorist who's a believer in Sharia law. I mean, every attack you could imagine Representative Ilhan Omar has had to deal with. At the same time, you have our president on a regular basis, either using 9/11 for financial gain, and I'll give you some details on that in just a second, or more importantly, saying things that are so incredibly insulting to the victims of 9/11, making it all about him and his narcissism.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's there's just a clear pattern again and again and again, and I feel on a daily basis we see it, which is Trump's main comments are generally about himself. It's about himself, it's about I'm right, and therefore you and everyone else are wrong. But outside of that kind of craziness and that pathology, I think you made a great point there, Emma, that I wanna kind of pick up on, which is really about who gets to dictate or shape the conversation we have about 9/11, right? 9/11 has profoundly transformed this country, not just historically, not just in terms of memory, not just in terms of commemoration, but in terms of military policy, aggression across the world, the increased growth of our military budget more than ever. And so for me, here on 9/11, 18 years later, I remember very vividly where I was on 9/11. And it's an opportunity here for us to think about where have we gone since then? What did that mean for us? And what might have been another response? And what are paths we can take right now moving forward?
But we're the only people doing that reflection. The Republican Party, this is the same party that tries to kill 9/11 first responders bills every time they come up, healthcare for those first responders. And yet they're the ones outraged at Ilhan Omar for not using the exact right wording, when it's really their outrage that she wears a headdress and is a Muslim person representing a district in Congress. And that's really what it comes down to. It's a political prop to them. 9/11 means what they want it to mean and when they want it to mean something at all.
That's a great point. And I also want to add to your list of how 9/11 changed us, and in a lot of ways changed us for the worst, by adding the fact that our civil liberties were taken away. Unfortunately, many Americans bought into the fear mongering that we heard from the Bush administration, and we allowed our privacy rights and certain civil liberties to just slip away out of fear. And I don't say that to insult Americans. I say that because you're absolutely right. It's an opportunity to reflect and to learn from our mistakes and really question what the best path is to move forward. I mean, and Emma, to respond to you, I agree. Republicans are certainly worse when it comes to this situation, but there are Democrats who have certainly signed on to and have never questioned the Patriot Act. They have voted along with defense spending, and they've been pretty complicit in some of the unnecessary wars we've gotten involved in. Not all Democrats, but certainly the ones who are willing to accept that defense money spending as well. So this is an opportunity to hold lawmakers accountable and reflect on how we further victimized Americans after that tragic day, because that is what's happening. And we further victimized people in other countries because of what happened on that day. Civilians, innocent civilians who had nothing to do with it whatsoever. And let me just note that there were Saudis, of course, involved in that tragic day. And we are fighting their war on their behalf in Yemen right now. That is what Trump has signed on to, and he does not question. And any time our lawmakers try to reverse course, Trump vetoes it.
Well, it's a genocide, not just a war, which I feel like our viewers should know.
And I just want to kind of emphasize the point that not only did we give up our privacy, our civil liberties, but it was also there was an incredible amplification of Islamophobia that emerged out of 9/11 that existed before, but it was taken to another level. We see the continuation of the Afghan war today. And so I just want to challenge us all to think about, what does leadership look like in the context of 18 years after an attack, right? What does that type of leadership look like? Is it about militarism? Is it about reacting in an angry and intense and inflammatory way? Or is it actually now about setting a new path forward?
Exactly. So I wanted to note a few other things, because it wasn't just Trump bragging about his building or getting 9/11 wrong and saying 7/11 instead. He actually took advantage of that tragic event for some government funding. So back in 2002, George W. Bush signed into law a budget containing some $20 billion in dedicated funding for New York's recovery. $2 billion was earmarked for distribution by the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation and the Empire State Development Corporation. About a quarter of that, some $500 million, was explicitly set aside for helping small businesses in the area recover. Now, what did Trump do? Did he take advantage of that? Of course. Among the 8,214 early recipients was 40 Wall Street LLC, the most valuable building in Donald Trump's portfolio of properties. Trump applied for and accepted the money, despite the fact that, as he acknowledged in an interview with a German news show immediately after the attacks, the property, quote, wasn't, fortunately, affected by what happened to the World Trade Center. So this man who talks about the need for entitlement reform and talks about these so-called moochers who are living in poverty and need government programs, he'll turn and say those insulting things about them. But when he isn't an actual victim, his building hasn't been damaged from a tragic event, he has no problem applying for and taking federal money.
And the complicity of someone like Rudy Giuliani, who was a major part of his campaign and who was mayor during this time, and he never lets us forget it, that he was mayor on 9/11 and that was his fear-mongering way to gain more political power, stood by his side knowing the corruption that happened when he took those federal funds. Because as someone from New York, the entire financial district down there was ravaged for years and years, and businesses are literally just starting to recover right now. It's still, in some ways, a ghost town at night, but it took so long for those actual small businesses to gain traction once again. So to have this grifter come in and actually take the federal funds that are supposed to be for small businesses in a city that I love and live in, it's just another layer on top of the things that he does that are so harmful. And he did it before he was even an elected official. So the destruction of him knows no bounds.
Yeah, he's a scammer, and he has, like many politicians, also used 9/11 for political gain and has lied about his efforts in the recovery. Take a look.
Everyone who helped clear the rubble, and I was there, and I watched, and I helped a little bit, but I want to tell you, those people were amazing. Clearing the rubble, trying to find additional lives. You didn't know what was going to come down on all of us, and they handled it.
Trump also claimed many of those affected were firefighters, police officers, and other first responders. And I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself a first responder, but I was down there. I spent a lot of time down there with you. Well, Richard Alice, who was one of the firefighters, actually he was the chief of the fire department in New York, he fact-checked Donald Trump and said, quote, "I spent many months there myself, and I never witnessed him. He was a private citizen at the time. I don't know what kind of role he could have possibly played."
Besides deeming himself a first responder. So maybe if he is called a first responder, then the Republicans don't need Jon Stewart to go publicly shame them into voting for healthcare for those first responders. So how about that? Trump, we can make a deal here. You can get to call yourself a first responder if you continue to fund the healthcare for the actual first responders who pulled bodies from the rubble, who pulled women, children, men from all of these dangerous situations, and who are now getting cancer and who can't breathe after doing that.
Sure.
You can vote through their healthcare, and then maybe you get to call yourself a first responder.
And I think there's a common playbook here, which is it's in moments of great shock, in moments of disasters where you see various sorts of policies enacted and that actually can be incredibly debilitating, and they really select who counts and who doesn't, right? Look at us right now, 18 years after this incredible event, this traumatic event. We can't get first responders healthcare, but our military budget has blown up.
Right.
So it's very clear in those moments, as per like Naomi Klein's shock doctrine, or what she calls disaster capitalism, in those disasters are opportunities to pivot and take power, political lasting power.
And that is exactly what the Republican Party has done over and over again. It's devastating, and we are supposed to learn from history. We're supposed to change course depending on the outcome of our policy decisions. And Bush was a complete and utter disaster, but when it comes to foreign policy, think about what happened when Obama came into the executive branch. He not only continued Bush-era foreign policies, he expanded upon them, and the numbers of civilians who died because of drone strikes and civilian strikes. I mean, we have to take ownership of our own foreign policy, and we need to learn lessons from them. Unfortunately, we don't see that type of lesson learned by our own politicians, our own representatives.
And President Obama had an opportunity to get into that office and restrict the powers of the executive so that someone like Donald Trump couldn't come in and within 14 months, 16 months, already kill more civilians in Iraq and Syria than Obama did in his entire presidency, and he killed a lot. So even though he identifies himself as someone on the left, he certainly was far to the right and authoritarian when it comes to the powers of the executive.
I mean, there's an expression I really appreciate in moments like this, which is history is what's happening. And so we can really see that right now on Today.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.